All right, let's get started. We got Texas Christian. It's always a fun game with TCU. These guys are pretty good. They, obviously coming into the league the same time that we came into the league. They've put themselves in position where they're pretty hot here lately. I thought they were dang good last year, and defensively I thought they were outstanding. They could have been considered as good as anybody last year, finishing 12-1. Their only loss at Baylor early in the year. It was a really good football team, and this year they've picked up right where they've left off. They don't look any different to me. They got some new bodies on defense, but they don't look any different to me. Anything that, the bodies that Gary Patterson coaches defensively are going to all end up doing the same stuff. So it'll be a huge challenge for our team, one that I know our guys are looking forward to. Like I said, this game's always been pretty fun and entertaining, so we don't expect this year to be any different. But offensively, they got everybody back from a year ago, led by Boykin. I thought he was the best player in college football last year. Yeah, and this year he's not doing a whole lot different. So he's got great people around him. A lot like Baylor, they got all their old line guys are all back from a year ago. So they got 4 seniors up front, led by their center. The Hunt kid, 55, is the best center potentially in the country. He's a really good player. But a lot of seniors up front. They're big, they're experienced, they've played a lot. So when you got a quarterback and an old line like that, then that's a heck of a place to start. As good a skill as we've seen. Dotson's playing as good as anybody. It's his favorite target. He's got 12 touchdowns already, so he's going to be a chore to be able to hold down and contain. And the problem with them, much like it was a week ago, if you start focusing on one, they got other guys that can hurt you. Listenby's playing well. The Green kid is playing well. The new kid, Turpin, 25, is extremely fast and incredibly shifty, so that put him up anywhere, like slots, running backs, and all that stuff. So a lot of weapons, and everything goes with that quarterback. He's a heck of a player and fun to watch, and he's going to be challenging for us to contain. Defensively, like I said, Gary's been doing the same stuff there defensively for the better part of 2 decades, and got a great scheme, sound, well coached. They got some bodies that they replaced. Their entire linebacking core, one of their safeties and both their corners last year are all in the NFL. Really good players that they've replaced them with a lot of young kids that maybe don't have as much experience, but they're good athletes. They've been waiting there, and they're ready to play. Their defensive front is what really stands out. Just the same guys as last year. They got 4 or 5 of those guys back. Only lost 1 from last year's team. And then their captain, the safety, the Kindred kid, is a heck of a player, downhill guy that is makes sound tackles as well. They're a group that's been getting better and better each week. With that kind of experience, they lost some kids to injuries at the beginning part of the year. You can really tell that this is a group that continues to improve, and especially coming off of a bye week, I would anticipate these guys pretty fresh and looking to get better. Special teams always solid. Their kicker's a heck of a kicker. He got us last year in the last seconds. And the thing that really stands out, their team speed on coverage units is spectacular, and then the speed that they have at returner is something as well. When you put, the Turpin kid, the freshman, he's a little bitty guy that's just quick as can be, and he's back there at kick returns with one of the fastest kids in college football in the Listenby. So it's going to be a challenge for our cover units, which I've been happy with our coverage units and all that, but it's going to be a challenge getting down there, containing some of the better guys out there, and then, continuing to improve as well. So it should be a fun week. We're already halfway there. We got to practice here tonight with the short week. We got to utilize Monday as a practice day. The problem is we schedule all our classes on Monday. So all our players are in class all day. So we'll get out there later on tonight under the lights as all these guys get done with their class schedules and have what amounts to a Wednesday practice tonight. Do some stuff tomorrow, practice a little bit on Wednesday, and then travel Wednesday afternoon. But sets up for a good, fun game Thursday night. take some questions.
You mentioned Doxson. Obviously, you've already faced some really good receivers. Where does he rate? How does he compare to Coleman and some of the others?
Big. It's a neat story. He somewhat under recruited out of high school and signed with Wyoming. Thought he was better than that and transferred back to TCU as a walk-on. It'd be nice to get a walk-on or two like that around here. But, he's got that relationship with the quarterback. He reminds me a little bit of Kevin last year with, kind of bursting onto the scene as under recruited, guy just making a name for himself, developing into a great big physical receiver and establishing a rapport with the quarterback that allows you to have the kind of stats that he has. So he's their number one targeted guy. And again, it's just, you know what Listenby can do, you know what Turpin can do, you know what the other receivers can do. And then, I think we're running the ball pretty good. They're running it more than we are, and they're averaging more than we are. So you got to be able to contain what they do in the run game, not only from their backs, but also the quarterback as well. But his relationship with Boykin is very evident, and so that's why his numbers are as good as they are. But he's a good player. Really good player.
Did the way they handled Blake and bringing him along influence you at all on Sills and Press and how you handle them?
Well, maybe a little bit, Bob. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I'm tired of seeing Boykin. I know that. I mean, he came out here as a freshman and played quarterback at a pretty high level, and then we saw him as a receiver, when they were trying to figure out what they're doing. I know when Meacham got that job, he called, we talked, and I said, whatever you do, don't put Boykin back at quarterback. But I really haven't thought about it that way. I mean, those as recruiting quarterbacks that have athleticism and recruiting guys like both Crest and Sills, their mentality about just loving the game of football. I recruit as many of those guys as I can. I don't care what position that it is. And I'm telling you right now, Boykin's that same kind of guy. The dude loves to play football. It just shows when he gets out there on the field. He loves to play football. Those are the kind of guys I want.
You mentioned that you did see Boykin as a freshman in 2012 out here playing quarterback. When you think about the Boykin you saw then and the Boykin you see today, in your eyes, how has he grown over these past few years?
Well, I think having Sonny Cumbie and Doug Meacham there for 2 years with him has done him a bunch of good. Sonny's a good friend and he was a good quarterback, and he's a good quarterback coach. So having the individual attention that he does has probably done him a lot of good throughout the maturity process of a guy that went from a freshman to what's now a senior. Had a lot to do with that. He played in a lot of games. Switching positions there for a while probably gave him knowledge of just the overall aspect of the game. And then Meach coming in and having a system that he believes in, and having a plan when it comes to not only him but the overall aspect of the whole offense. I think he's benefited greatly from it.
4 players on your roster from the state of Texas right now. Since TCU and Baylor have kind of risen to the top over the past, 5, 6, 7 years, has it gotten even harder? I mean, I know Texas has always been a hot recruiting ground, a lot of contention there. Has it gotten even harder to get players from that area?
Yeah, we don't have the manpower to be able to cover everywhere, and so we've obviously made the decision that there's good football on the East Coast and the surrounding areas up and down, all of Ohio and Pennsylvania, and then up and down the East Coast from Georgia to North Carolina, South Carolina, and then obviously the time that we spend in Florida. We would have to take guys out of that area to send them to Texas to recruit really good players. There's no question. I mean, I'm a huge proponent in Texas high school football and the coaches and the job that they do and the talent that comes out of there. I think you just got to be realistic of what your odds are to be able to get guys. Baylor and TCU used to be afterthoughts in the state of Texas when it came to recruiting. I was at Texas Tech for 8 years, and Houston and Oklahoma State, and they were going elsewhere, but now they're going there, which, yes, obviously makes it even harder to be able to recruit. And then the SEC's coming in there a lot more too. With Texas A&M going to the SEC, a lot of those SEC West schools have been coming in recruiting a bunch as well. So it's difficult to recruit there.
Yeah, how has Boykin evolved from last year to now? I guess he can go all the way back to freshman.
It looks the same. I mean, the last 2 years with what Meach is doing with those, it's the same stuff. It's the same players. They're just getting better. They just get better. They got better from game 1 to game 13 last year. Have they gotten better? I'm sure they've gotten a little bit better, but the numbers are the same. So how much better can they get? He's a good football player. I thought he was the best one in the country a year ago. Looks like the same guy to me.
And you get a sense of any extra motivation on Skyler this week, not only returning back to his home state, but his hometown?
I hope not. It shouldn't mean any more to him. I mean, I'm quite certain it probably means a good bit to him anyway. I kept my eye on that a week ago. I mean, it was the same deal 10 days ago, or when because we stayed in Fort Worth and he had a lot of family members come to the hotel, and then we drove an hour down south. So it was about the same thing, that it'll be this year. I mean, he's a Mountaineer, and it just happens to be from there. I think it's important to him to go up against any team in the Big 12, regardless of who it is or where it is. So, he's got a job to do, and he's been working hard here in the last 10 days, and I'm happy with where he's at this point.
Well, when you look at TCU, Dana, in their first 2 years in the Big 12, they kind of took their lumps fishing near 500. In the past 2 years here, I mean, they've gone some like 20-1. With y'all also being a fairly new school in the Big 12 here, does that rise and that kind of improvement from TCU kind of give you guys hope that hey, that hey, we're kind of, once we've kind of taken our lumps, we can maybe get to that point too, once we're kind of fully transitioned to Big 12?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a good measuring stick, I think, with where we're at. We had identical records year 1 and year 2. And both times that we played against them, it was overtime games. So, and then last year, they won some close games. We lost some close games. The one game that hurt was a year ago. Here we're sitting at 6-2, and we're up 10 points in the fourth quarter against TCU, and they figure out a way to win. So, I think that shows how close we are. With that said, we're not finishing games and finishing close games as well as they are right now. I mean, they've won, I think it's 19 out of 20. You said 20 out of 21. It's something like that, but it's pretty dang good is what it is. So I think we're close, and we're not far off. They got a ton of seniors on offense right now. We got a ton of seniors on defense. Offensively, we need to continue to improve to the point to where we can affect some games at the end like they did a year ago. And that's my job, to get our guys offensively to that point as soon as possible.
Do you like midweek?
On both sides of the ball, do you game plan defensively and attack them the same way as you did last year?
You got to watch the video and whatever gives you the best opportunity to win, clearly. So we did some good things defensively against them last year. I mean, you're not going to stop these guys. I mean, these guys are averaging 50 points and 600 yards a game. We knew we weren't going to stop Baylor either. Last year out here, we did a good job of doing that against both those schools. When you go to their place, and they got a little bit more motivation due to the fact that we did play decent against them a year ago. That means offensively we got to do a better job of matching scores. If we want that game against Baylor to be any different, then we need to be able to match some scores. Not quite there yet offensively. Hopefully over the bye week and a little bit more practice, we get a little bit closer, because TCU is going to score some points. We know that. And offensively, we got to be able to match them, and then defensively, we got to do what we can to get as many stops as we can.
Dana, the continuity they have on defense with the same system for many years now, unusual. How good is that? How nice is that to have, and how unusual is that in today's college world?
It's fairly unusual, I think. it's nice to be sitting here a year later with some pretty good continuity on both sides of the ball. It helps. I think that Gary's been doing the same stuff there. I commend him for changing what his thought process was offensively. That's been the difference in them the first 2 years in the league and where they're at right now. So and you got to have that in all three phases of the game. If you want to develop real consistency and real improvement, then you got to keep things relatively the same and continue to get better at it.
Bobby, help you guys with some of the bumps and bruises and everything?
Always does. Always does.
Dana, with their defense, some of the stuff that he does with pattern matching and half a man on one side, half his on the other, is it any different walking a quarterback, whether it's Skyler or anybody, through that team for that week, or is it the same and just kind of tell them what to expect and might be unusual?
Yeah, it's all just becoming as familiar with your opponent as you can. It's just video. They still can only play with 11. They're still going to have tendencies, and they're still going to have, the unknown of what they're going to do from week to week. I mean, that exists in every game. So, get familiar with as familiar as you can with it through video. Practice against it. Get your teams to do the looks, and then you got to be ready to adjust with what they do in game. So. I tell you what sets him apart more than anybody. It's really not the scheme as much as y'all would like to think it is. It's more the technique that these guys play with. They play with tremendous effort, and their technique defensively is really good. Their pad level is really good, and their technique is really good.
Seems like in last year's game, they beat you up front, both sides of the ball. They harried Clint quite a bit and gave him a tough time, and the second half ran the ball at will. How do you turn that around, or how do you go about trying to turn that around?
Yeah, they did. They were defensively, they were really good up front. I think defensively they were really good last year. And again, they were a senior team. Their three linebackers were the best set of three linebackers I've seen in a long time. Their D line is very physical. They play with great technique. And most of those guys are back, unfortunately for us. So we got to do a good job of pass protecting and protecting the guy. Protecting Skyler. Didn't do a great job of that with Clint. He got rattled a little bit. He'd be the first to admit that. So we got to protect him up front. We got to run the ball effectively, which I did think we ran the ball effectively last year, early on especially. That's a key. But doing it over the course of the game would have been nice last year as opposed to shutting things down in the third. And then defensively, they're going to try to run the ball. I mean, they're averaging 225 yards a game, rushing. And big physical O-line with some quality backs and a quarterback that can run it as well. It's our deal defensively. And we contained Baylor in the run game for the exception of the quarterback keeping it. So we've worked hard on that because we know he's going to do the same stuff.
Anything you can take from the Minnesota game?
No, they were physical up front. I mean, they tried to run the ball. And that's good Minnesota Big Ten football. They were going to try to run the ball, and then defensively they were pretty decent at defending the run. So you can take bits and pieces from everything, but you got to do what you do and have it fit with what you do, as opposed to overhauling an entire defense.
Along those lines, Dana, I think you said kind of outscoring TCU, which is kind of what you wanted to avoid last week with Baylor, right?
I'd like to get to the point where we can. I mean, I've been involved in some games where it's been fairly high scoring. We haven't been there yet. Yeah, me too.
Do you behave differently in games, whether it's trying to hold on to the ball more, maybe by running it, possessing it, going for it more on fourth down? If you anticipate a game like that and then find yourself in it,
I'd like to be able to do that. The one drive, I think drive 3 against Baylor. I think it was drive 3. It's like a 14-play, 6-minute drive. We could use about 4 of those in this game if we can move forward and get some first downs. But. Yeah, you can, but we if you go back to a couple years ago, I tried to do that a good bit, and we weren't worth a dang. I mean, we were bad. So, you know, we have to be able to find a good level of having some control with the ball, but not letting it disrupt us. It can disrupt us if I go too slow. If I'm just trying to kill clock, we're going to be punting pretty quick. And I don't think anybody's interested in that.
Danny, you've played Thursday night games almost every year you've been here. I guess, what do you think of the whole deal, and I guess enough time to get prepared kind of speeds up the work week?
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. I mean, you know, national televised game, there'll be a lot of eyes on the television set. I mean, that's always good for the program. The exposure is good. You know, it should be a live, you know, environment in Fort Worth. Big 12 did a good job with their scheduling of Thursday night games. Both teams will never play this Saturday before. You know, that's always been the gripe, especially if you play a Thursday night game with just 5 days preparation, and the team that you're playing didn't play on that Saturday. You know, that ain't no good. I'm not a big fan of just the 5-day turnaround. You know, I think how the Big 12 does it, I think they got it right. If you're going to play some Thursday night games, don't play the Saturday before. So we'll have ample time to get ready for this game. More time to get ready for this game than we will the remaining games.